creative.
How's Aubrey doing?
Doing good.
Good.
Tired.
They've been working there pretty good over there at the
Mm-hmm.
shelter. Is it picked up a lot over there? Where she's at, is things picked up or is it?
Yeah, because they're wading through the things now as people come in. She's at the clinic, vet clinic. So instead of letting them inside, they go out to get the dog or the cat,
Yeah,
bring it in.
I've seen that.
Keep them from coming in and touching.
Exactly. So she says just a lot of work, a lot of running, back and forth.
A lot of activity, yeah.
Come on, broadcast.
Yesterday, which we spent the day at her grandma's, putting in the floor, finishing that project. So when she got home from work, we spent the rest like 2 o'clock till, I think we got home at 9:30, 10. It didn't need to take that long, but we were just having fun, put the grandma on, just relaxing.
Some of them projects, no use in working yourself.
Yeah. Eating pizza and carrying on.
Finish out project 47, only got 382 left.
Yeah, that's about right.
Well, we're on live up there. This thing keeps saying air loading broadcast. That's just what I need. Tell everybody you're gonna be on, then it don't start.
I'll put this banana down and do a song at least.
You sure it's not a sleepy one?
Yeah, that was good what you put out about Let It Be. That was really good.
You caught that?
Yeah.
I thought, you know what? I need to dig, because a lot of people think, you'll see it listed as John Lennon and Paul McCartney.
Mhm.
John Lennon wishes he wrote that. And another thing is, even though it was not based on religion, John Lennon did not like the song because of the religious overtones, and he was very, very anti-religious. So he didn't like the song at all, but he went ahead and did it with him. So I thought, well, let's look a little deeper in it. And then when I found that article for 2007, I thought, wow,
That was
people
good.
have no idea.
I found it
Yeah,
and I showed it
okay.
Yeah, give Connie credit
to
now.
you. Yeah.
Okay, so we looked it up on your phone, right? Is that what you're trying to say? All right.
The funny thing is, Friday night I thought I'll just flip through whatever song I come to is what I'll do. So I came to Let It Be. I pulled it out, I thought, nah, I'm not gonna do that. So I pulled out another song, What the World Needs Now, and I could not get the tune. I couldn't. Everything went wrong on that song. So I went back to Let It Be, and when I started off singing Let It Be, I was mentally correcting myself. See, you should have went to this song first. I told you to go to this song first. So I had to stop the song and say, okay, Alan, just relax. Quit beating yourself up and just do the song. That's what happens when you don't listen to your own spirit. You get in trouble. They're right, Brother Tory.
Yes.
Refuge for the poor, shelter for the storm. This is our love. We'll wipe away your tears, turn your wasted years. This is our love. Oh,
Good to see everyone.
Said, come to the table. Come join the ones who have been redeemed. Take your place beside the Savior. Sit down and be set free. Come to the table. Come to the table. He said, come to the table. Sit down the ones who have been redeemed. Take your place beside the Savior. Sit down and be set free. Sit down and be set free. Come to the table. Come to the table. Come to the table.
Yes. Come to the table. That's what we're gonna call
That's
it.
what we're doing.
Came to the table.
Yeah, the table.
That hawk's been out here all morning.
Really?
Seen her 2 or 3 times. Yeah.
Last Sunday it was here a lot, so might see it a lot today too. Going after a bird.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever it's out, the other birds just don't come out.
Yeah, I noticed that.
He's not a friendly guy. Okay, it's good to be back this morning, and I finally got everything working. I couldn't get the live broadcast for some reason. It kept saying error loading, but it's up and running now. So that's usually if I'm held up with sitting down here for a few minutes, it's running on Facebook. It's because the live broadcast hasn't, the signal hasn't loaded yet. I usually turn it on a couple minutes ahead of time because of that, but still it takes some time. So this morning, Friday night, I thought we had a good discussion, good talk. I think we got out of here about midnight.
That's normal for Friday night.
Yeah.
We have another discussion after the discussion. So, but I was staying on the kind of the same thought that we've been on for a couple weeks now. I want to read a couple of scriptures. I thought this morning, still on the same kind of the flow of the mind, but I wanted to open up and read some scriptures here, just a little bit. Hope it doesn't scare anybody too much.
You're a biggie backslid.
Yep.
Yep. So, in Genesis 2, we read where that, I can find it here, okay. The names of the rivers flowing in the Garden of Eden. Then God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding, and the gold of the land is good, the bullion and the onyx and the stone. And the name of this, the name of the first river, I'm sorry, I missed it here, flows through the whole land. And the name of the first river is Pishon, which flows, surrounds is what Pishon means. And the second river is Gihon, which means to move forward. And then the third river is Tigris, which flows from the east Tigris meant a mythical place or an imagination. And then the fourth river was Euphrates, which means the exposing, an expose, the ending, whatever you want to call it. Euphrates brings everything to manifestation, exposes what has been surrounding, moving forward, and working in the imagination, then it comes to life. So that's Genesis. It's like 11, Genesis 2, 11, 12, and 13, 14. And then I wanted to read just a little bit over here in Psalms. We see the river of life, and it flowed out into four rivers or four names. And then David is talking in Psalms, the first chapter, and he said, "How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked." Now we know who the wicked is. It's us. It's in us. We're the wicked one, and we have, of course, converted our wicked ways. But it says, "How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of the scoffers." That's where we're at. We don't walk after our wicked ways. We know who the wicked one is, and we check him every day. We don't have any sin. We're not walking in the paths of sinners. Sin is not a part of us. Sin is not even a part of the world anymore. Nor sit in the seat of scoffers. When the Spirit is moving us and the flow is moving us and we see it, even if we don't understand it, we're just going to keep looking at it and watching it, and slow but sure kind of get the revelation of it. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. His delight is in the nature. Nature is the law of the Lord. And in his law he meditates day and night. So the day and the night are no different to him.
Right.
He meditates day and night, or he stays, he thinks on the flow and lets that move through him. He will be like a tree firmly planted by the streams of water. The streams of water, those four streams, which yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither, and in whatever he does, he prospers. That's what's coming out of Eden, puts us in that position that David is talking about, those four rivers and streams of water. Is there? Okay.
There you go.
And then I wanted to turn over to Revelations 22, 3 scriptures about the rivers of water. Revelations 22, "And he showed me a river of the water of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of God and of the Lamb. And in the middle of its street, and on either side of the river, was the tree of life, bearing 12 fruits, yielding its fruits every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations." So we see that this river is flowing right through the throne of God, which we know is our heart, and on each side of the river, or whether you're awake or not, there's a tree of life and a river resting in you, and it's flowing, and we're bringing forth fruits in season. 12 different fruits, or fruits in season. We're not bringing forth the same thing all the time. That's not what life is about. Life is about bringing forth experiences. And the way John wrote it here, it was to say 12 fruits in their seasons, or in other words, it's bringing forth many different experiences, many different fruits. Fruits comes from the experience, from the life, from all of those things. So I wanted to talk about transitioning forms in the mind, and or exit and entry of the cycles of the mind. And I wrote this and put it last night on Facebook. It said, the Spirit has a flow of mind into the earth. Now, I read to you about the 4 rivers, and if you don't understand where I'm coming from with these 4 rivers, go back to should be on Facebook now, and I got to remember to say this, so I'll do it now. Valerio, India is on a lockdown. They can't leave their homes. He can't, what do you call him? The guy that loads all the tech guy.
Mm-hmm.
He can't go into work. So he can't load what we have. There's about maybe 8 or 9 messages ready to be loaded, including the one I'm talking about, which is fixing our eyes on Eden. When it comes up, if you haven't listened to that message, I could say from that message on, you're going to hear us talk a lot, whether it's a month from now or a year from now, about these 4 rivers flowing out of us, and how that it's flowing out of our mind. Our mind, this is the garden. Eden is the mind. The rivers are flowing out of the mind through the throne and out into the earth. So if you don't see it on Facebook, it's on Facebook, but if you don't find it there, it'll be on the website before too long. They're locked down, I think he said, was 48 hours, and when he was talking to me, he was maybe 12 hours into it, and he said, we just can't go to work and load everything. So they'll get it on the website, don't worry, it'll be there. So the Spirit has a flow of mind, those 4 rivers flowing out into the earth. The mind of Christ flowing out through humanity. The Spirit has a flow of mind into the earth and revealed the flow to us when He created Himself a body and spoke to us. It was very hard to understand that flow. Moses wrote it in symbols. People didn't understand it, but when Jesus came along, He created Himself a body and got into it. He revealed the flow to us in some simple thoughts, but the flow is existing and entering sections, measurements, and spaces of time. So as it's flowing through the earth, through your body, out into the earth and flowing through the earth, it's showing up. The flow shows up in sections, measurements. And it shows up in measurements and spaces of time. And I wrote this, I said, time is the expose or the exposing of every step we take. Time exposes it. And so time is defined in experiences that begin and end. And this is what the Lord said to us when He was in the body of Jesus. Time is defined in experiences that begin and end. You have those times or revelations in your life wherein you refer to the spaces of that growth. I would make a statement, when I was a child, whatever it might be. But I don't do that anymore. So what did I just do? I separated out a section of time in my life. When I was a child, I done this. But I don't do that. Like Paul said, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I acted as a child, but I don't do that anymore. I'm not a child anymore. So I have separated out a section of time in my life. When I was a human resource manager, I did this and this and this, but I'm not a human resource manager anymore. I'll get into that in just a minute, but anyway, I refer to that as a section of time where that attribute was dominating. The child's attribute was dominating in me, or the human resource manager, or the fireman, or the policeman, or the truant officer, or whoever it might be. Something is manifesting in you, and it manifests in times or sections or revelations of your life. And we use those spaces of growth, is what they are. The childhood, a space of growth. A manager, a space of growth. An employee, a space of growth. Whatever you might be, whatever job you go to, whatever day you're in, it's a space of growth. And we measure those out by family. I would refer many times to myself and say, when I was single, I did this and this and this. Well, then I had a family. And I don't much refer back to the single day, even though I have that attribute in me. I don't refer back to it that much unless I'm talking about, something that happened then. So you talk about family, love, death, education, career, marriages, births. You kind of, before Joe was born, Patty and I did this and this and this, or before Jessica was born, or whatever it might be. We refer to things, and what we do is we separate out a section to where we stop thinking about this over here and just put it aside, and we're thinking about this. So time is revelations or sections, measurements split out for us to define ourselves, is what it's about. It's all about defining ourselves and putting on an identity of who you are. Jesus said it. There's beginnings and endings in our life all the time. And endings and beginnings. And endings and beginnings. Things end. Some of you, you were parents. Your children are up and grown. They've gone out. They have their children. You have grandchildren. You're not acting as parents anymore. You're acting as a friend, as an advisor, as someone that's a loved one, as whatever it is, but you don't have any children to be parenting. You may be a grandpa, grandmother, or whatever. So you kind of have a reference to sections of time. Jesus did the same thing when he made the statement. He let us know, behold, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last, and I am alive forevermore. He is Alpha and Omega, which is the first two letters, the first and last letter of the alphabet. And he said, I'm first and last, I'm beginning and the end. And so he said, I'm alive forevermore. Herein, these words of Jesus reveal to us our continual exit and entry of positions in our life. We enter something and it's dominant for a while, and then it kind of fades because we moved into another phase or section of our life. And like I said, I was an HR manager for almost 30 years. Am I not an HR manager now? I still am. I have all those attributes in me, but I'm not using them in the manner of them being a dominant attribute. So keep that in mind, because what you were a million years ago, you still are. You're absolutely that. But you have moved into another section of time where that you're referencing yourself as something further, different, beyond, whatever you want to call it. We're referencing ourselves to something else. I had in me back there all sorts of attributes, and they were a part of me, but I wasn't referencing them when I was in the great fountain of life. I wasn't looking at myself as those things when I was in the great fountain of life. But today, I've come far enough that I can look back and say to myself, when I was in the great fountain of life, I had theophany, I had spoken word, I had humanity, I had sex birth, I had all those things in me. And did all those things go away? Now that I've come through all of them and I'm sitting down here, a trillion years from that time back there in the Great Spirit, am I any different than I was then? Only in experience. Still the same person, still the same theophany, still the same mind, still the same everything. You don't die, you're eternal. So Jesus is referencing to himself, to the body of the Lord. We are constantly changing. Paul referenced it from glory to glory. We continually change and transition ourselves on a continual basis. I want to talk about exiting and entering phases or cycles or spaces or times within our lives that help us to remember. That's what it's about. As we grow in humanity and keep growing and keep moving forward, and whatever the next phase of my life is, there's a point to where it's like you buy a you buy a computer, and the computer has in it a hard drive, and then what you do is you load on that hard drive, you load on software, and that software, as you load it on, then you begin to learn it. Well, we were in the Great Spirit back there, millions and trillions and beyond ever even referencing anything to do with time. We were there, and we had attributes. We were like the hard drive. We were empty, dark, nothing manifesting itself. We were all those things, and then we moved into from that Great Spirit. We moved into something else and something else and something else, and we kept loading on to the hard drive. And if you remember at one point, how many remembers back? I know the young ones don't. You probably don't even know what I'm going to talk about. The DOS system. You remember the DOS system? I used to have to keep my HR files on a DOS system. You talk about a nightmare. But the DOS system was numbers is all it was. Letters were numbers. Signs were numbers. Everything was numbers. And those forms that you see, when you turn on your computer now and you buy a new one, and it's got all those emojis, and it's got, you know, in order, you don't have to hit the heart in order for a heart to come up. You can hit the greater than sign, and the 3, and boom, a heart comes up. That's the DOS system, going all the way back to numbers, signs, signals, all those things, and you had to hit each one of those. They were a part of your keyboard. I remember when the keyboard used to be half as big as this table, and then the computer itself was the other half of the table. So the first one I bought, I think it was 1991 or somewhere around in there. And it was like, wow. Patty remembers we were laughing about it not too long back. We had a huge desk, an old oak desk, and the computer and keyboard took up the entire top of that desk with a DOS system. So we've gone beyond that. We've gotten into microwave. We've gotten into all kinds of internet. We've gotten into Safari. We've gotten into, and then everybody loads everything up on hard drives and software. And within 10 minutes, I mean, you've got something you can play with and good time with it and keep all your records on it and do everything. So you kind of move through that great spirit back there, the great fountain of life that Brother Branham called it, the rainbow fountain of life. In there laid the DOS system. We were a part of it, but didn't know that much by experience. All the logic was there. Everything you'd ever want to put onto a computer, they all still run off DOS system, but they moved out of that great spirit and they moved into an easier way. And we've gotten technicians and programmers and everything else that moved us into a much easier way of doing things until here we are. I'm sitting here talking to you and you're in Africa or Asia or Europe, some of you up in Canada and all over the place, and we're using the DOS system to do that. So it's just, we have taken that great rainbow spirit and we have moved it into a greater way of manifesting it and a better way of life. All the way down through, it's always a better way, except for Microsoft 8. It's all, that was a terrible one. But it's always a phase forward, a better life. And that got me laughing. You know, they got on to Donald Trump. They said, why do we want a president that refers to women as fat broads? And he said, only Rosie McDonald. But I always laugh when I think about that. It's like, you know, I only referred to one woman as that. So we have this flow of spirit, and we have moved all the way down through, and only Microsoft 8 gave us some problems. So behold, I'm Alpha and Omega. We're talking about entering these spaces and times within our lives that help us to remember. Markers that differentiate our experiences in life. A marker, you know, in the Old Testament they called it landmarks. It differentiated their lands, their experiences, what belonged to Judah, what belonged to Ephraim, what belonged to Manasseh, what belonged to this one and that one, and each tribe had markers, and they gained their inheritance throughout the land. And so they had markers that differentiate their experiences in life. Things that happen in our lives are separators, dividers in our lives, and experiences that help us to define our growth. That's why we moved in to this great separation time, is to define our growth, to define our identity, to define our experiences. And we define them with terms of back when I had pneumonia, back when I moved out of the church ages, back when you say that, you automatically, everybody that knows you, their mind goes back to 2002 or 2014, or back when Love Divine began to break in Revelation. Everybody goes to the Philippines, December 2014. Why? Because we use terms to differentiate spaces and divisions in time and measurements to define us. And we say, you remember Microsoft 1, you remember Microsoft 2, how it was? Some of you don't, but I know you're in your youth. But, you know, 8 was a terrible one. Microsoft X, it was one that wasn't so good, but it was certainly better than 8. And I can move through there, and every time you make mention of computers, you remember when we had the DOS system, you remember when Apple was the only computer, I can go back and reference a time. If somebody says, back when I started on the computer, Apple was the only one. Well, I can reference back and go back and say, wow, they've been on computers for a while. It moves out spaces of time for you. I remember when, and immediately you move into a section and a space of time. It helps you with your remembrance. Your definition and your defining and your growth. Examples of those things are births and deaths, tragedies. You know, in America, and probably most of the world, I can say before 9/11, and everybody's mind is going to go back to the towers dropping on September the 11th. It's going to go back there. 2001, September the 11th, the towers dropped. And I can make a statement, before 9/11, I was doing this, and your mind's going to go back to that time because it's a reference of what's going on. So, births, deaths, when my dad was alive, automatically my family and people that know me, their mind's going to go back before 2006. So, tragedies, 9/11, diseases, We got one going on right now. Everybody, when it's 20 years down the road, many of you youth and some of you older, you're going to be saying, you remember back before the virus, COVID, we had it this way. You remember how things were during the COVID panic? And your mind will automatically go back to 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have those things that separate our lives out all the time. Deaths, tragedies, marriages, divorces. Other things will cause you to refer to things in your life as after, before, or during. We do that same thing if we are spiritual with our spiritual lives. We were the great fountain of life. And it was a system that didn't manifest things. It was a system that we lived in, we walked in, we were alive in the mind of the Spirit, alive and well, before any foundations of the world, before any foundations were created, before any of these things became references, and we were able to build definitions and foundations and measurements. We were alive and well in the great fountain of life, the rainbow Spirit that flows throughout the universe. There wasn't even a universe, but now it flows throughout the universe. Back before all of this came about, this was reference, the rainbow Spirit was a reference that this was a reference before the pillar of fire. There wasn't even a pillar of fire. Mm-hmm. It was a spirit without form, without void, without any of those things. It hadn't taken on any movement. It was alive, a great fountain of life. When I say that, if you understand my message from this day forward, when I say the great fountain of life, go back before the pillar of fire or anything, and we were alive and well, and the sons of God were shouting for joy. The morning stars, we were in a great period of time, but nothing had come out and manifested itself in such a way to gain experience. This is a reference before the pillar of fire. When I say theophany, it's a reference immediately to things after the pillar of fire. When the pillar of fire formed itself, it became a part of the universe. It became the first manifestation that broke out of the Great Spirit was the pillar of fire. And then out of the pillar of fire, all things were created by Him and for Him, and nothing was made that wasn't made by Him. If there was a devil, they came out of the pillar of fire. If there is demons, they came out of the pillar of fire. If there is, you say, my God, Brother Parnell, you can't say those things. Where else did they come from?
Right.
They were laying in the Great Spirit in DOS, in signal, in attribute, laying there, not manifesting themselves. And then as the pillar of fire, that Great Spirit began to think in his mind, back there he was, I put it another way, back there in the Great Spirit flowing in the rainbow Spirit, he was Pishon, surrounding. He was the whole thing. And nothing had even been manifested yet. And then out came the pillar of fire, the Great Spirit, the rainbow Spirit. What did he do? He broke open and moved into Gishon. He moved forward, formed himself in a pillar of fire, let the mind of the Great Spirit flow in and project itself out of that pillar of fire, and he was able to begin, like the prophet told us, he said there the pillar of fire was, and he said out went a little clinker off the pillar of fire, and it went out so far and it stopped. And he said, there hangs the sun. And he said, out goes another clinker, and it flies out, and it travels through the space of the Spirit, and bang, it stops, and there's the earth. And it flies out, and slow but sure, out of the pillar of fire, it created an entire universe for us to live in. When we weren't even living in it yet, Hizon, the pillar of fire, was moving forward and creating, using its imagination. The pillar of fire had an imagination, and it was using its imagination to create all of these beautiful things that you see. And it was Adam, and it was you, and it was me, and all these things. And when he created the earth, then we see we were the great fountain of life, the rainbow spirit. This was a reference before the pillar of fire, the theophany. And then we moved from the theophany into something else. The theophany was the logic of the pillar of fire, what he wanted. And we moved into this logic of the pillar of fire, or we moved into the theophany, and then we moved, reference yourself again, we moved into the spoken word. We moved into the earth. We moved into half of what the theophany is. The theophany was a holistic being, all of its attributes in it. It had flowed out of the Great Spirit down into the pillar of fire, and then starts breaking out into a theophany, or separate identities of Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, and it began to break out. Well, we see when it come out of theophany, it created a whole spoken word civilization before Adam and Eve or anybody else ever came along. There they were living in a spoken word civilization. So it moved from Pishon to Hizon to Tigris, and then things began to break open. Adam took some flesh and put it on. The earth was created. All these different things began to come into manifestation. You begin to be able to see what the earth was about, the seeds and the water and the dirt and the spoken word human beings, and all of these things begin to move through the earth. And then in order for us to move into a holistic being, it moved further into the river Euphrates, or the manifestation or the expose of the whole being. How did it do that? Through an intimate sexual relationship. And we moved into the whole being of, in spoken word, we weren't manifesting any of the, quote, dark attributes, or the unknown attributes that were hatred, malice, envy, strife, anger, jealousy. All of the sexual relationship brought out that iniquity that was in the theophany. The theophany, read your scripture in the book of Ezekiel. It does show, he said, that he was perfect until iniquity was found in him. Who's it talking about? The theophany. It had it right in it. So we move from the Great Spirit into the pillar of fire, into theophany, into spoken word. Now you can correlate yourself in any one of those. As you begin to talk, we correlate in our mind a time frame for this reference about us. Great fountain of life, pillar of fire, theophany, spoken word. I have to correlate and go all the way back before humanity when I think about those things. I have to go all the way back before the universe when I think about the Great Spirit. I have to go all the way back before the pillar of fire if I think about the great fountain spirit. So we have all these markers now spiritually in our lives, just exactly what we did is we wanted to form more markers and gain more growth and more experience. It's all been about the growth of who we are. And we gained more growth from the DOS system when we moved into these Apple computers, and then we moved from Apple into a large variety, and you know all the names today, but slow but sure, we kept moving down through and referencing ourselves and moving into more growth and more growth and more growth all the time. Come out of the Great Spirit into the pillar of fire, a great amount of growth. And then into theophany, another great amount of growth. And then into spoken word, another great amount of growth. And a lot of people say, then we had a downfall. I don't think so. I don't think so. We don't move backwards. We move forwards. And coming out of the spoken word, that half of a person, which was all of the bright side and all of the light side, if you want to call all those things, we come out of that and we broke in to darkness. And now all that we are, because we moved into another form, all that we are forms out of the darkness. Because that's where we moved to. We moved into it. We needed to in order for growth to happen. You know, we need the night for the growth to take place in the earth. If the sun was hitting the whole earth all the time, everything would die. It needs the night to produce elements, to bring growth, to do all the things that it needs to do, to take its rest, to do all those things. So we correlate in our mind a time frame for this reference about us. It is markers that can help us relate to distances, talking about that long space that we came through and referencing it, moving ourselves back through different references, different sections, different spaces, different measurements, and different attributes. So we have this. Markers of transition in time. You do it all the time in the earth. If Mississippi, my mind is immediately going to go back to where they were living before they moved here. And he's going to start telling me about an experience, and he just referenced his life of saying, when I wasn't living here and I was living here, we did this and this and this. You reference it all the time. No different in spiritual life. You have markers that you've come through. If I say to you, when I was going with my family to the Branham Tabernacle, immediately, anybody that knows me, you're going to immediately reference back to me before I was 12 years old, because at 11 and a half or so, William Branham was taken off the scene. We didn't go to the tabernacle anymore. It was too long of a drive. And so if I reference back before, or back when I was going to the tabernacle, you're going to think of me as a young boy. If I say, if I reference to the point of when, back when I first started preaching, those of you that know me, you're going to reference back to a 13-year-old boy, because that's when I started preaching. So all of these things that we go through are blessed things. You wouldn't even understand yourself. You wouldn't understand how old you are. You wouldn't understand how young you are. You wouldn't understand how powerful you are if we didn't have these references to separate our personal lives and be able to refer to them. And I say personal life. If I say back before I was moved into humanity, that was still me. That's still a personal life of mine. A personal life of mine in spoken word. A personal life of mine in the theophany, in the pillar of fire, in the Great Spirit. That's a personal life of mine. And as we travel through these things, we are going to remember more and more and more about ourselves in those times. But we're breaking into that mind by the flow of the Spirit gradually, so we can taste and feel and see and hear and understand every minute particulate moment that we have going on. And we're able to remember it all. That's what the theophany is all about. I don't remember much right now, Brother Parnell. No worries. No worries. It's laying right inside you, and as you need it, it will begin to flow. The mind has a flow into the earth. When I needed to understand my natural birth, which was an attribute laying in me in the Great Spirit, in the DOS system, when I needed to understand my natural birth, it passed me down through pillar of fire, theophany, spoken word, and here I sit. And in February the 8th, 1954, when I needed to feel, have the emotion, and understand my natural birth, bang. I came in through Opal and Lehman Parnell, February 8th at 2-something in the afternoon in 1954 in St. Elizabeth Hospital in Lafayette, Indiana. And I began to understand and bring reference to my natural birth from that moment on. And we do this all the time. And we need this. When you hear me talking about moving back to eternal things, doing away with the church ages, doing away with this, moving beyond this, going beyond spoken word, you are still spoken word. You are still theophany. You are still the DOS system, the Great Spirit. You are still all of those things. We're not, quote, putting those away in such a way of no more remembrance. It's all in you. And when you start up that hard drive, whatever you need, you can move right to it and understand it. And I needed my natural birth, and I moved right to it. I needed a grandmother, and she was there. She began to move in my life. I needed a mom. I needed a dad. I needed to understand. I needed a brother. I needed a sister. I needed all these things that were laying in me as attributes and surrounding me in Pishon, and began to move in Gihon forward and begin to break these attributes open. And then in Tigris, in my imagination, I said, I need to feel these things. I need to have some emotion about these things. And I broke into the earth at the appointed time, and I began to feel what it was like to have an older sister, an older brother, a younger brother. I began to feel what it was like to have family, to have birth, to have all of these things. I began to feel it, and the emotion was there, and I referenced myself according to that. So we see this, everyone that has a mental capacity to understand what I'm talking about will have a definite marker in your life in 2020. If you're following my message somewhat, you'll say 2020 was the year that Brother Ettore, Brother Don said, we're going to level the playing field. And then you're going to say, boy, didn't that happen. COVID-19 leveled the playing field. Everybody became vulnerable and had to start working with one another. And the whole world's in lockdown right now. And in 2021, 22, 23, 40, 50, 60, wherever, you're going to reference back to, you remember when we had the lockdown? Remember when there was so much panic going on? Remember when the streets were empty? Remember when the shelves were empty? You remember what we had to do? You remember what it was like to live in the house for 14 solid days? You remember what it was? We're going to have a lot of things to look back, and this year, 2020, is going to be a permanent, dominant marker in all of us who are living in this time. So we have this marker in our lives now, and that's the pandemic, COVID-19. We refer to this marker in the future time and time again, saying before the pandemic, immediately your mind goes to 2020. During the pandemic, or after the pandemic, in 2040, Sister Cha, Sister Che, some of you, you're going to be looking back and you're going to say, you remember in the pandemic? Well, after the pandemic, this and this and this took place in my life. And I'm going to say, well, that had to happen to her after 2020. Because these things, these major things, these tragedies, these birth, these family developments, all of these things are major dominant markers in your life. Don't forget this message. As simple as it might be to you, don't forget this message, because as you remember things and as things begin to come to you, you're going to begin to flow into that spoken word side. I manifest it every day. I manifest love, peace, joy, long-suffering, meekness, kindness, goodness, all these things. I manifest all of that bright side every day. And I refer that back to the time when we were in spoken word and had all of those attributes going on around us. What a great time that was, but it wasn't holistic. And I'm going to say to myself, you're going to say to yourself, and humanity, after humanity came into the holistic side, what are you going to immediately think about? When we came into the natural birth process, we became holistic. We became people who had both righteousness and iniquity laying within us, that had both light and darkness laying within us, that began to move out of the unknown. So when I say back before iniquity came along, if you know my message, you're going to immediately go back before the sex birth came along, because we didn't manifest any iniquity during those time frames. We all have these things, before, after, and during. It will happen often in our discussions. Why? Because this is a great transitional period in our lives and in our spiritual understanding of things. When we have one of those quantum leaps, if you want to call it that, when we have one of those times in our life that is so dominant in transition, we don't forget it. I see brothers on the internet, they'll talk about 2014, the things that were ministered. Other brothers will say, I was there and I don't believe it. And then other brothers will say, oh, I was there and I seen it happen. And these are the things that were ministered, and these were the things that were prophesied, and these were the things that were said, and these are the things that happened. Why? Because we all have our differential memories about those times. Listen to me, the people of Jericho are still alive today. They're just not in the flesh the way we think of flesh. They're still alive. And they got a memory of a death angel coming into the camp named Joshua and his mighty army, and how he destroyed every last one of them, and how he did all of these things to them. Now they're living in a life now that puts them in a different feeling and emotion about it. It puts them into a revelation of why that had to happen, but they still have the memory, is still laying there, and they think of Joshua as a death angel, while Israel thinks of it as a victory. Those same people of Israel are still living, and they think of it as a victory, as a march for themselves back to the promised land, to the place where their great father Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob lived, back to the glories of everything that we had. They think of it as a wonderful thing, but those that they trotted upon don't think of it as such a wonderful thing. So each one of these transitions holds a differential emotion, feeling, and thought about when we were coming through the processes. I think of 2002 as a great year for me. A revelation took place with me, and I was visited by the prophet from the other side, and it began to wake me up to so many things. I had no idea that at the same time the heavens were manifesting what was taking place. I had no idea that at the same time, it was exactly 40 years later, and there was a deliverance beginning. At that time, I had no idea about it, but now I look back at it and I see such a glorious time in 2002, and a lot of those people around me right now today would say, it wasn't such a great thing. That caused splits all over the message. It caused splits all over the world, all over the place, and people begin to pull out this way and that way, and churches begin to pull away and everything else. It caused all kinds of splits. And then I think about 2014 in my mind, and I think, my God, my Lord, what a move in the Spirit that was. But I can name names of men who say it wasn't no move of the Spirit at all. That was a horrible time. That was a time when Don Parnell, a Tory, that was a time when he went off the Word. One brother wrote me, he said, "It broke my heart to see you walk away from the Word." And I thought, walk away from the Word? I'm walking further into the Word, into the holistic being, into one Spirit, into all these great manifestations and things that the flow of the mind brought to us. But everyone references each transition according to their own experience, their own path of life that they build off of that experience. Some brothers said, "This is glorious, this is wonderful, this is amazing." Some brothers stood up and ministered one Spirit, no more a twofold being, and ministered many great things, and ministered on the rapture has already happened, the resurrection has taken place. The millennium is set in. We're in a new heaven, new earth. They ministered on so many glorious things. And today, when I listen to a minister, I'll hear them say, light and darkness are not the same. We came to that revelation to understand, like David did in Psalms 1, light and darkness are the same to me. I'm meditating and thinking all the time. They're the same thing to me. We come to that revelation, and they did too. And then after it continued to come so far, they said no more. And now when I listen to a minister, they're talking about a rapture that's going to come someday. They're going back to things of 50, 60 years ago and placing themselves there and saying, I haven't moved any further than right here. And I just have to shake my head. I think, what in the world? How can you come across the Jordan River and go back? But did you know there were 2 tribes that did that? There's a type for those kind of people who crossed over the Jordan, caught the great revelation, love divine, seen all of these things in all of its beauty, and then began to say, the land is too much for us. We want to live on the other side. And they went back. So we have all these markers. We have all these references. And we refer to them all the time in our mind. When these transitions take place in our experiences, we're not a different person. When I held the mind of the Great Spirit, I was laying back there. I held the mind of a DOS system. That's me. It was me. The person, Don Parnell, a Tory, Ollie Janssen, sitting back there in that great mind, manifesting as much as I could about signals and letters and numbers. But then I came out of that and I moved into the pillar of fire. The pillar of fire didn't make me a different person. It's still the same person. Daniel was, Connie was, Alan was, you were. All of us were still the same person. We were just moving forward, flowing in Gishon, still in the mind, flowing in Gishon, and moving forward. And we moved from that to the theophany, and we moved from that to the spoken word. We were flowing in mind from Gishon into Tigris, and we took our imagination and we began to create. We created a Euphrates. We began to build an expose. We began to build the earth. We began to build all these things around us. And we took these translations, and it was us and it's still us, and it's still the same person, whether I was in the Great Spirit's mind, whether I was in the theophany mind, whether I was in the carnal mind, or whether I'm in the spiritual mind today. It's all the same mind. It's a matter of phases, references, transitions that we go through. It's all the same person. I'm no different person than I was a trillion years ago. Only by experience. So we transition, take place in these experiences, not a different person. We're the same, but with another experience. An experience that marks our life. I often refer to our message and say, before 2002, when I was in the church ages, whatever it was, but when I refer to before 2002, you immediately, if you know my message and you followed it, you immediately think before the prophet visited him and brought out so many great things. He's talking about before that time. I often refer to it, or our message, I refer to it and I say, before Love Divine, or before 2014, or before Philippines in December. You don't think of last December, you immediately think of December in 2014, because we reference those things. And it's because of our great transitions that took place in those periods of time. We are still the great rainbow fountain spirit, but our experiences have brought us to refer to ourselves in a different light. Instead of referring ourselves to a DOS system, I would say, I'm Apple. I've got an Apple computer. I got an Apple phone. I refer to myself, I don't say, I am the DOS system. Oh, Lord, this generation and the last generation, they would say, what in the world is this guy talking about? I'm the DOS system. I'm Apple, or I'm Microsoft. Or, you know, when we refer to the internet, I say back before the internet. That takes you back into the early 90s. And you say, well, he's referring back into the 80s. Mm-hmm. Back before the internet. But it's come further than that now. You know, it's named Safari. It's named Explorer. It's all kinds of different names. And as you think about all these things, it keeps breaking down and giving you a reference. If I look at you and you've got an Apple computer and I say, let's go on to Safari, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Bang, you're going to hit the button, you're going to bring up the internet. Mm-hmm. If I say, you know, let's get on Internet Explorer, you go to Explore, you pull it up. These are the things that I'm saying. We continually reference ourselves to different things as we hit that experience. And that's why I said you will never go back to just being the DOS system. But we are the DOS system. You'll never go back to just being the pillar of fire. But we are the pillar of fire. And you never go back to just being in the theophany, in logic, in spoken word. But we are those things. Mm-hmm. They're in us. We are them. It's us that's come this far. And this is the Great Spirit sitting right here in front of you, in humanity form, in spoken word form, with theophany and pillar of fire, laying within my hard drive, using and doing everything that it can to bring itself out and express itself in an expose of Don Parnell, Atori, Alo, Yanso. So we see this. We're still the Great Spirit. Our experiences brought us to refer ourselves in a different manner. Where do you live? I would say in the cloud. And only the people who understand my message are going to understand what in the world I'm talking about. You know, you say, oh, I thought you lived in Dayton, Ohio. Oh, well, I do. I thought you lived in Fairborn. I thought you lived in Yellow Springs. I thought you lived in Lafayette. I thought you grew up there. I thought all of those things are true. But I could say, I'm living in the Great Spirit, and it would be true. I'm living in the pillar of fire. Absolutely the truth. I'm living in the cloud. Or I could say, I'm living in Yellow Springs, Ohio. Because we reference ourselves all the way down through and become more and more and more experiential all the time. What I'm trying to show you this morning is don't just throw away your experiences. Articulate them. Think about what's going on. Put markers in your mind so that you never forget that experience that you had. We transition from the fountain of life to the pillar of fire. From the pillar of fire to theophany. From theophany to spoken word, and from spoken word to humanity. And into an intimate, from spoken word humanity, because we were humanity in the spoken word, living right here in the earth, another civilization. We put on a human form. But we moved from that spoken word humanity into an intimate procreation humanity. Mm-hmm. Instead of just talking and saying, you know, bring the earth up and put some flesh on it, and we got into an intimate humanity, into an intimate relationship. If I say to you, back before our intimacy, it's spoken words what I'm talking about. Before we ever came into the iniquity and the intimate side of humanity. We transformed into intimate procreation. If I say to you back before procreation, you're going to immediately think back to spoken word, theophany, pillar of fire, and Great Spirit. Mm-hmm. But now, I have an intimacy about myself, and I want to, it's dominant around me, everything from the squirrels to the trees to everything, it's dominant all around me, to the people, to the elements, because I am taking that person who traveled through that long line and that infinite distance to here. I'm taking that person and wrapping things around him and making an expose. I'm building Euphrates. Euphrates is the expose, the revealing, the unveiling. I'm building a Euphrates in my mind. We're all in the mind. Somebody said, when we came out of the mind, we ain't never left the mind. We're all in the mind of Christ. But what we've done is we moved in a process from Pishon all the way down here to Euphrates, through Gishon and Tigris, and we are manifesting or bringing out the mind of Christ. All of us are. Every single one of us. We have not left the mind. We are not outside the mind. This is the mind of Christ. And you don't refer to yourself as when I was in the mind, because you never left the mind. Right now, we're in the mind building our Euphrates, our expose, our unveiling of who we are. So we transition all these ways. The flow of the mind cycled through every one of these markers and has moved into the cycles of intimate humanity, Euphrates. What I call a holistic humanity. If you want to term it, if you want to give it a term, holistic humanity. From the point that we begin to manifest all of our attributes, not just one side of them. When we come to our awakening, when we come to our understanding, we have records of thousands of years, civilizations with growth, transitions, the Aztecs, the native Americans, the French, you could go on and on. The Africans, the black race, the brown race, the white race, call it whatever you want. But we have all of these civilizations back through time that built themselves up and then spread throughout the earth. And we grow all the time. Civilizations with growth, transitions, and movements in procreation to bring out all of the flavor, all of the beauty, all of the texture, all of the tone, all of the tinsel, all of the most minute things about us, to bring them out so we can enjoy who we were in the DOS system when we couldn't manifest. We have transitioned through the cycle of the mind. Pishon, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates. Nourishing the movement out of the church ages. We came out of the church ages. We still hold all of those principles. We still hold all of that beauty. We still hold all that we learned about the land of the church ages. But we have moved on further. Nourishing the movement out of the church ages. We are manifesting, or Euphrates is bringing out and unveiling a move beyond the church ages. We move through the transition period and into a new world of love divine. Leaving all the prior references. Leaving all the doctrines and principles and all those things. Leaving them all to come to a new reference. To come to a new place. While we are still the fountain of life. You go over there to that computer and take the DOS system out of it and see what happens. Mm-hmm. It ain't even going to start. Mm-hmm. All your whole starting program is DOS system. Mm-hmm. It can't even have a starting place. I am still the DOS system. But you're not seeing the dominancy of the DOS system manifesting itself. Although it comes out of me every day. I'm still all of these different things. I'm still moving through Pishon in some experiences. I'm still moving through Gihon in others. And Tigris in others. I'm still imagining things, and I'm still believing other things are going to come to pass in my life. I have promises that were made. I have things that were said to me that I'm looking forward to in my life. But I'm enjoying where I'm at. I'm not unhappy. I'm not saying, oh my God, I wish that would happen, this would happen. Why is this going on with me? Get into Tigris. Get into the imagination. Get into it and realize where you're at. That this is the mind of Christ, and you are, in fact, creating all the time. So we moved into love divine, leaving all the other references. While we are the fountain of life, the pillar of fire, the often spoken word, we've come to a further reference. What are you, Brother Parnell? I'm a human. Where are you at, Brother Parnell? I'm in love divine. I have referred myself and brought the identity, once I became a human, of being Don Parnell, a Tori Allianza. And I've referred to myself as living in Dayton, Ohio, as doing all these things, because this is all a part of the Microsoft. This is all a part of the software system. And we build software into our lives and we use it. And you know what happens to software after a while? It gets a little old. And you know what you got to do? You got to update it. What people have done, they're setting in software that was built back in 1963, 4, and 5. When William Branham opened the seals. And they're trying to pull up software and use it off of that. Well, take
There wasn't even a computer around then. But anyway, take a software program that was built in 1989 and see if you can load it onto your computer today in 2020. It's not going to work. It's not even going to come up. It's going to say syntax error. And it's not going to work. And I'm telling you, if you're trying to do that in your spiritual life, you are causing the same issues in your life. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. Update your software. So we've done this, and we moved into different references, or we continually update the software that works off of the DOS system. We've continually updated our references that work off of the great fountain spirit. Think about this year. I don't know what time it's getting to be, but
11:23.
okay. Think about this year. All of you, as you're watching, we've leveled the playing field. And we've leveled the playing field of time, of thought, of everything. Last year, we kept saying, we need to get rid of hierarchies. We need to get rid of this. We need to get rid of that. We need to move beyond inferior and superior. We need to move, and we kept breaking these things down further and further and further. And we went through cycles that moved us through the candles, the seals, the trumpets, the thunders, the plagues, into new heaven and new earth. We moved cycles of the mind from theophany to carnal mind to spiritual mind. We just kept building cycles and saying, this is all of us. This is how we're moving. This is how the world's moving. We brought it to one spirit. We brought it to one love, one hope of our calling, one baptism, one everything. We just kept bringing it to one and breaking these phases down and moving ourselves into a way of leveling the playing field. Daniel has had all the same experiences as me. He had his experiences in a different form of life, in a different way, in a different town, in a different city, in a different birth, in a different everything. But he had all those experiences to where he has in him, Alan has in him, and you have in you the capabilities to reference and bring your experiences into this great time that's happening now and level out the playing field. And all of us are just as important as the other. All 12 men on the football field, all 5 men on the basketball field or on the basketball arena, all the soccer players, all of us are just as important as the next. You got your runners in soccer, but take away the goalie and see what happens. We all are absolutely where we are supposed to be now. Reference and transition. And yes, some of us still hold within us those great offices in a more experienced way. All of us hold the offices now. We all pastor our families, our own lives, our personal beings. We all evangelize and tell people about our experiences and help them along the way. We all teach about what we learned. We all hold those gifts and offices. And some of us who were in the church ages, we operated those things in such a dominant way that we do have more experience with them than the next person. So there's nothing wrong with trying to draw off that experience and say, I'm going to listen to Brother Parnell. I'm going to listen to Tori. I'm going to listen to Alan Copeland. He's got experience. I'm going to listen to Daniel. I'm going to listen to Joe Gomez. There's nothing wrong with saying, I need you and you need me. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm dependent upon one another. Even though you have your full independence, you have your DOS system, you have all those things resting in you, and even though you have all those things, you still know that this man sitting next to you came up a different road. He came up on the other side of the mountain, and I need to know the feel, the terrain, the things that happen, the emotion. I need to know all those things, and the only way I'm going to know about the other side of the mountain is to listen to him, to listen to his upbringing. The only way I'm going to know about the nature, the intimate, internal nature of a black family is to be involved and understand. I can read about it in a book all I want, but Alan has taught me a lot about the atmosphere and families that grew up in black neighborhoods and black families. You want to know about white? Talk to me. I had a family that grew up in mostly white neighborhoods, white schools, white this and white that. You want to know about spiritual things? You want to know about how to, now that I've told you, you have within you a apostle, a prophet, an evangelist, a teacher, and a pastor, that you hold all those gifts? If you just run out there and say, I got that gift and I'm going, you're going to have a hell of a time. It's going to be horrible for you to do those kinds of things and just say, I got it, so I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it manifest. But if you talk to some of us, if you talk to Joe Gomez, who pastored for 30 years, if you talk to me, if you talk to different ones, if you talk to men who have had rule in the past ages when they were deacons and trustees and all these kinds of things, and you say, you know, I'm developing these things in my life now, and could you help me with this? Sure, they'll help you. And yes, you will grow, and there will come a time when you won't have to do so much of that. But right now, in the front end of this thing, pay attention to your dependency upon those who have already operated those things for years. It's a transition period. Edwin Roman is sitting there in Manila with Jess Santos and with many of the other brethren. Brother Longo, Felix, Brother Lloyd. I could just keep naming them. Brother Laic. On and on and on. There are many brethren that are sitting there with those gifts in them. Brethren who operated in their churches with gifts in them that you should be right now saying, okay, I have this wonderful thing. They've now made me realize and woke me up to the fact that I got it in me. But that doesn't mean you know how to use it so well yet. So talk to those who have been experienced in it and have used it in their dependent lives and have worked the apostleship and the evangelistic side and they've worked it in their life to where it's a flow for them. And you can gain so much off of them to work your way into interdependency to where they're going to come to you one day and they're going to ask you, how did you operate this? When your child did this? When they put you out of the gathering where you were going? How did you react? What did you do? How did you manifest these gifts? You say they're now in me, but I've never used them. How do I use them? Talk to your people, talk to one another, and realize the flow of the thing, and realize that we have come to a level playing field, but now we all need to learn how to play together. Now we all need to learn how the tackle works with the guard, and how the guard works with the tight end, and how the linebacker works, on and on and on. How you work with one another in our great positions in this level playing field, working with one another. Use your references. Use your preferences. Use your time as a mother to teach others. A mother has those 5 offices laying in her. She just uses them in a different manner. And a real mother can teach you how to be a mother to your children. I can teach you a little bit about how to be a child to a parent. You know, I went through. You talk to my relation. Go to any one of the family reunions, and Don Parnell comes up a lot. Boy, when you were a child, when you did this, you remember when you did that. And you know, I can tell you a few things about being a child because I operated it to the full extent, both the righteousness and the iniquity. So we've leveled the playing field of time and brought us all to the understanding of our purpose here and to the understanding of what's flowing within us here. We spoke of 2020 being the great year of leveling the playing field. We kept talking about it, the hierarchies, the governments, the political scenes, this and that. We said the field needs to be leveled. We spoke of 2020 being the year of leveling the playing field. The Spirit moved at the end of the year in 2019 in November in East Wuhan, China, and created a situation that would bring great leveling. That nobody is greater than the next. We're all susceptible. We're all here together, and we have to work with one another. And we need to do it out of love, dependence, interdependence. All of these things, we need to do it out of the gifts that are flowing within us, how to work with one another, how to love one another, the talents that we have. We have learned the leveling of the playing field. It don't matter how rich you are. It don't matter how high you are in the government. It don't matter, man. We all have to exercise the same thing and play together on the field, or it's going to be a disaster. We spoke in 2020, the Spirit moved, brought a leveling of the playing field, created a situation that would bring the great leveling. We are watching the blanketing of the earth with the Spirit of Moses, the 14-day Passover, the Lamb. You know who the Lamb is? That's you and me. And the Lamb is now shut up for 14 days in lockdown, so that when it comes out of the lockdown, it comes out of the shut up and pinned up, when it comes out, it will have no blemishes, it will be clean, it will be perfect, it'll have all of these things that it needs to be worthy to be sacrificed for Israel by the high priest for that year. They put a lamb up. And here we are, the Spirit of Moses blanketing the whole earth. Doing exactly the same thing right now. Leveling out the playing field to where every one of us are clean, holy, and pure, and we come out of the other side worthy of this great age that we're living in. The Spirit moved. We're watching the blanketing of the earth with the Spirit of Moses, with the Spirit of Elijah. The seventh seal came from where? Oh, he came down from heaven. When the seals were open, what seals were really broken? It's the seals in you. Broke open so you can unveil yourself. Elijah is working in this movement right now in a great way, breaking open the seals, unveiling and exposing, moving us from Tigris into Euphrates. And yes, it's a great rapture. It is an abduction. We have abducted, we have raptured these elements into a higher consciousness, and we're using it for a different manner and a different preference than we've ever used it before. We're watching the blanketing of the earth with the Spirit of Moses and Elijah, bringing all things to the burning, the leveling. Joel said that there was a great army, and this great army was moving through the land. And he said, everything has a great burning with this army, and it does not break ranks. And he said then, when the burning takes place, he said, it's like the Garden of Eden. What are we doing? We burned all of this iniquity that we've moved through. We've burned it up with the Spirit within us, and we've converted the red dragon the devil, and we brought the wicked one out, took him off the throne, and we've brought into the earth a brand new world and a brand new day, and everything and all of that iniquity we have burned. We've put it in the fire. And you say, you mean we done away with it? It's annihilated now, Brother Parnell? Absolutely not. What does everything go into the fire for? To come out pure as gold, to take the dross off. What is eyes of fire for in the book of Revelations? It was to purify all things. We now have eyes of fire. We're looking at everything as pure, holy, unblemished. And the Spirit of Moses has brought the whole world to that now. We're going to be celebrating one day how we passed through the great COVID virus. Say, oh, I don't believe it was anything to start with. It certainly is a crisis, whether you believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly is a blanketing of the whole world, whether you believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly is the Spirit of Moses doing it, because it shut up for 14 days, the same way they shut up leprosy for 14 days, and then they'd bring them out and check them, and they would find them once they shut them up. They'd find them and they would be healed, and they would release them into the community, or they wouldn't be healed and they'd put them back in the leper camp. The same way that we have come through our leprosy for 14 days, the same way we've come through the shutting up of the lamb for 14 days, the same way Jacob came through his 14 years, 14 days. He worked for Rachel for 7 years and he got Naomi. I'm sorry, it was, I forget her name now. It wasn't Naomi. But anyway, he got, Laban gave him his first daughter, and he had to work another 7 years to get Rachel. Leah, yes. So through Leah and Rachel, we've worked our way through. Mm-hmm. And we're coming out on the other side, and we are birthing right now. We're birthing Joseph and Benjamin, bringing these things forth into the earth, the great Joseph ministry, the great Benjamin, the right hand and the power of Euphrates, the exposition, the unveiling of who we are. We've come to the destruction of the earth. Oh, Brother Parnell, but you said destruction just means change. That's all it means. We've come to the change of the earth. Mm-hmm. We've come to the time when the earth is moving forward more and more, and the Spirit is bringing forth things into the earth. If it has to bring forth a virus, it will. If it has to bring forth a bacteria, it will. If it has to raise up some kind of leadership in contrast to us, it will. If it has to raise up a Hitler, a Stalin, a Mussolini, when it was ready to build the symbol of Israel and put Israel in the homeland so that he could say he fulfilled all that he said he would do with that nation, when it came that time, Israel was bankers, they were lawyers, they were doctors, they took over Germany, the Jews had taken over many nations, Zion had taken over so much, they didn't want to leave. They weren't going to walk away from those things. So you know what happened? A virus got sent into the earth named Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, Fernandez, all of these men, bang. Here come World War I. Right behind it came World War II. The Jews went into exile. They took them out of the banking units. They took them out of the doctors. They took them out of the lawyers' lives. They took them out of everything, and they couldn't do anything except go back to their homeland and form a nation. And the way the Spirit did it, there wasn't no devil out there, no demon out there. The way the Spirit did it is it built a contrast to level the playing field and take the Jews back home where they belonged. Learned your purpose. The purpose of it is to move us forward in growth. Move the earth forward in its manifestation. Move us from Tigris into Euphrates. Using Gishon. Using the DOS system, Pishon. Using all these things, moving us forward all the time. All the time. What a great day we're in. What a great moment we're in right now. Pay attention to it. Pay attention to the patterns. Patterns of the Bible. Patterns of political history. Patterns of political movements today. Pay attention to the patterns. Know the spirit that you've come through and that you still are today, and realize you can start looking and saying, well, this is going to happen next, and here's what's going to happen next, because you're in that flow. You're in that understanding. I knew for a fact it was time for the leveling of the playing field. It was time to remove all these things spiritually from our movement. And for 1 year and a half, I hammered and hammered and hammered on it and kept saying it, and people began to see it, and ministers began to see it. And then the Spirit said, you know, it's moved out of the spiritual system now, and I've got to take the political and the religious system and bring it along. So the Spirit created what's taken place. And it'll do it more and more and more to make the political and religious scenes follow along behind the spiritual scene of who you are. It's going on all the time. Exit and entries. Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. But I'm alive forevermore. I just keep coming through all of those things, and I keep moving forward in life and learning more and more and more growth about myself. That's what this is about. I know that in some ways it's a simple message, but I meant for it to be. I wanted you to see yourself and to put yourself in these things. Don't sit back and think, oh, there's a spirit out here doing it. You're doing it. Sit back and say, oh, when I get into my theophany, I'll remember and I'll learn all of these things. Right now, I'm just not good enough. Forget about all those former teachings. You are in your theophany. You are in your spoken word body. You are in the Great Spirit, and you came out of the pillar of fire. And I don't care how much iniquity you manifested. It was in you all the way from the Great Spirit, and He didn't annihilate you then. You didn't annihilate yourself at that time. You didn't annihilate yourself in the pillar of fire. You didn't get rid of Hitler before he ever came to the earth. Because it's all a part of you. This is manifestations of you. I want to be something better than those manifestations. I want to stand in the spiritual side and keep moving us along in the spiritual side and bring us to these sights and these things and this purification and this understanding before we have to go through it out here in the earth, so we'll understand. I understand why I'm locked in. It doesn't bother me. Oh my God, I'm worried if I get the plague and die from it. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't die. My flesh is all that changed. A virus, a bacteria, made my flesh change. And it changed, but I'm still right here. And I'll still be doing what I do. I'll still be bringing forth my gift. I'll be moving through the world that I moved to, doing all of those things just the same. I've come to understand my purpose. And I believe that I can help move us through these things spiritually ahead of time to where we're prepared, ready, and it doesn't bother us. If my wife comes down with that COVID-19, I'll grieve, but I'll never forget the purpose. I have learned something great, and I know that she'll still be standing right next to me. She'll still be with me. She'll still be doing all the things that she does. She'll still love me. I will still love her. And I will know that somewhere along the line, the virus changed her body or changed my body. But somewhere along the line, the veils will break enough that we'll see one another again. We have eternal life. No worries. You say everybody had to come under the great death angel when he passed. You had to be under the blood. No, they didn't. Only the firstborn. Moms and dads, any woman, no woman is the firstborn, according to the Bible. Any woman could run around Egypt all night long, be an Israelite, nothing would happen to her. But it's the firstborn who had to be in that house. The firstborn had to be under that blood. The firstborn had to experience it. That's who we are. We are the first fruits. We spiritually come under all these things and recognize it so that we can manifest it before the world in the example and in the manner that we are supposed to do. The rest of the world, they're not firstborn. They're a part of Christ, but they don't step into these things ahead of you and be the first fruits of the field. You're the first fruits. You've learned our lessons. You know our purpose. Now, manifest it, be the example, be what you're supposed to be, and bring your expose out and let the whole world see you as you unveil. And people say, you don't act like you're even worried. How can you be that way? You're able to give your testimony. I see these things spiritually. I understand these things. You talk about eternal life like you already have it.
What?
You don't get eternal life till after you die. No. It's now. You have all these experiences. You're the firstborn. You understand these things, and it doesn't make them less. They are still born. They are still in the earth. They are still sons and daughters of God, of the Holy Spirit. But you are firstborn. You have all the understanding of the family, the blessings, and everything else. That makes us elite. No, it doesn't. You're still just a part of the family. But with an understanding.
That's right.
With an understanding. This is a family thing.
Yeah.
Amen.
I'll sing to you all a hymn of love for your faithfulness to me. I'm carried in everlasting arms. You'll never let me go. I'll sing to you all a hymn of love for your faithfulness to me. I'm carried in everlasting arms. You'll never let me go through it all. Through it all. Through it all.
Amen. Through it all. I hope it's been a help to understand yourself, to think of your preferences, your references, and who you are.
Yeah.
As we stand here holding hands together, trusting that all things work together for the good of those who love this understanding, who love the Lord Jesus, and are called according to his purpose. We understand our purpose. It's us. As we stand here in the authority of Christ, be healed, receive what you need financially, move through this life like the sparrow. Know from one day to the next you're going to be fed, you're going to be taken care of. Know all of these things. Be like the lily of the field, though it neither toils nor spins, yet Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like this day, like this age, like this understanding. It's a great blessing. Accept it in the authority of Christ.